What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today, I thought it would be fun to continue our conversation that we started a few weeks ago about being a content creator. A few weeks back, I posted an episode about whether it's worth being a content creator, for pay. And I had put out a Q&A for you all to submit your content creator related questions. And I ran out of time to answer those in that episode. So today I'm doing an entire episode just answering your questions about being a content creator. Most weeks I release both a shorter and longer version of my episodes. So in the shorter version of the episode this week, I'll kind of streamline my responses. I might not get to all of the questions. And in the extended cut version of the episode, we're going to get into the weeds of it, okay? If you're really invested in figuring out, do you want to be a content creator and how to do it well? How does it work? All of that. So I ended up posting this poll twice to Instagram, both from the first time that I made the episode a few weeks back, and then I just reposted it again yesterday, asking you all to submit your questions about being a content creator. And no surprise, the most commonly asked category of questions was about the money related aspects, like how do you actually make money? How do you strategize so that you can make money? All of that. So if that's what you're here for, we will definitely get into that. But before we dive into the money related questions, I think there were some really valuable questions submitted about the process of how do you become a content creator and how do you continue to be a content creator? One person asked where to start or how to get started. And another person asked, how did the start look? So let's talk about how the start looked for me, and then I'll talk a little bit about how to get started in general. Before I started Private Practice Skills in 2018, I had been doing various types of content creation prior, though none of them generated income. Or maybe just a tiny bit. I think none of them generated income, though, if I'm not incorrect. We're not going to dive into the details of my prior content creation endeavors today. I've talked about it in prior episodes. I'll link to some of those below if you want to really watch my origin story. But even just right before Private Practice Skills, I was pushing pretty hard in the content creation area for my therapy practice. I had a YouTube channel that was called Dr. Marie Fang, and I had an Instagram handle called Dr. Marie Fang. In fact, I think the Instagram handle is still up. That's kind of cringy. I should check. I should check if it's still up. I have not posted to Dr. Marie Fang. I'm pretty sure the last time I posted was the week I found out I was pregnant with my first child in 2018. So that feels like it dates me a little bit. But even looking back on the content I was creating for Dr. Marie Fang, which was a combination of regular blog posts, I think weekly at the time, weekly YouTube videos featuring tips and tricks to be your best self today. Yes, that was my little catchphrase, and Instagram posts that were kind of highlighting some of the things that I was talking about on my YouTube channel. The best way I can phrase it is it was a phase where I was trying to find my content creator identity. So I morphed and shifted as I was speaking, and I touched on a lot of topics, and to be honest, still got a lot of traction. So I'm kind of speaking a little bit not negatively, but it was just part of the process where there wasn't enough there to be really successful as far as quit your day job and make money off of it kind of success. I was just trying to market my practice. And in time, I did learn that out of those options from how I was approaching it, writing blog posts was most successful towards actually filling my practice. And I started Private Practice Skills in 2018. And so I put all my content creation energy towards Private Practice Skills. The actual origin story of Private Practice Skills I've talked about many times, so I'll link to something below if you're interested in hearing the full story. But the short version was I had a deep interest in teaching, and in 2018 spring, I finally had the opportunity to teach a graduate level MFT class. I loved it. I was obsessed. It was like it scratched an itch I didn't even know I had. And then when that class ended, the itch intensified, and I was like, I have to teach. But I also really wanted to have children and soon. And I also realized how poorly, unfortunately, adjunct teaching pays. I think when you count all my prep and not just lecture hours, but prep, grading, office hours, responding to student emails, it came out to less than $15 an hour. But I loved it, but I wasn't about to have kids and agree to a 15 an hour wage when I could just keep seeing therapy clients in my practice, which was already full. But I was looking to see if I could scale that back so that I could be at home more with kids and have something that generated income, but was more flexible. Like I can't just move my 8 a.m. client to 3 p.m. because my baby's crying at 8 a.m. I mean, you can sometimes, but like on the regular, just always adapting and, opening my laptop, working for 10 minutes and then closing it and then attending to my baby, that kind of thing. So combining all of those variables together of like, I felt like I had to teach. I also wanted a very flexible schedule that I knew I would have to build, but to eventually build to in time. And I wanted to earn a decent wage from teaching. Those factors were brewing on my mind. I had this like sleepless summer for 2018 where something was just like trying to come out of me. And I literally woke up at 4 a.m. While my husband and I were on vacation, and like everything for private practice skills like downloaded into my brain and it just clicked. And at that point in 2018, there just was not that much content about how to start a private practice. And the reason why that ended up being, I think, the outlet that made sense for me at the time is because I started my practice and I had a full practice. My marketing strategy was working, and I just constantly would have therapist friends asking me like, hey, how did you get started? Wait, what do I need to consider? Like just all those little details. If you've ever started a practice or thought about it, looked into it, there's a lot of little details that it takes, and also just strategy, marketing strategy that we don't get taught. And so I found myself just passing along information, adding to the information, then passing it along again to so many friends. And I thought, let me just put this out there. It should be free and it should be easy to find. So that was where the concept was born. So that's the origin story of like where I thought of the idea of private practice skills. How I actually developed it over the years was I first just committed to posting one weekly YouTube video. During my 4 a.m. wake-up call, when the idea for private practice skills downloaded in my head, I had like 50 video topics already, like within the first hour, just like frantically jotted down, like what are all the things that people need to know when they're starting a private practice? I'm just writing it down. And that was like my first year of videos on Private Practice Skills YouTube channel. I just made a video for each of those items. So that's what I committed to. I said, I'm going to do this for a year. I'm going to start by only doing a weekly YouTube video. And they were much shorter, and probably took me like 30 minutes of work just to do the YouTube video every week. Maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe it was a couple hours. And then, I can build from there. So I did that for, I think, a couple months, maybe 10 videos. And then I started an Instagram account. I started posting, I think, a few times a week on Instagram. And then I did that for a few more months. And then I started blogging weekly. And then I started learning about how to grow my email list, which I learned that I'm so grateful I learned this at the beginning. That is one of the most valuable tips you can learn as a content creator. Grow your email list, because that's the only thing on the internet that you truly own. And so growing your email list is something that you can take with you, even if like Instagram and YouTube and Twitter and TikTok and whatever else like die tomorrow, you can keep your email list and bring those people with you. So I started growing my email list about 6 months in, and my goal was to just keep posting on all of those platforms weekly, at least for a full year, to see if I could build an audience. And my goal was to grow my audience to like, I think a couple hundred subscribers on YouTube in a year. And then I wanted to see if after a year I could generate a little bit of income. What ended up happening is I think I reached 1,000 subscribers, like slightly less than 1 year in. And then I got contacted by a sponsor who had seen that I was posting regularly, and they wanted to start sponsoring my content. So that's where I started monetizing right at 12 months. And it wasn't that much at the beginning because my audience was small, but the sponsor was most concerned about like, hey, are you planning on posting regularly? That was their like focus point, because they had worked with other creators who maybe post for a season and then lose steam and drop off. And they were saying they're really interested in having a continuing relationship with a creator who's going to post regularly. And I said, yeah, as long as like I can find a way to get paid for this, like I'm kind of planning on doing this for a really long time. So that was when I got my first sponsor. And that was 1 month before I went on maternity leave, because yes, I got pregnant in the middle of all of that. And then it was only in 2024 that I started podcasting in earnest. And at this point, my audience is pretty split 50-50 between folks who consume my content on YouTube versus via podcast. So I was not expecting that, but clearly it's shifted over time. And also my regular YouTube videos are much longer and just very different format now because the landscape of the internet and what people use YouTube for looks very different than it used to. And there's way more information about starting a private practice, which is awesome. So if you are thinking about getting started, the first question I would ask is like, what's your goal, right? If you're looking to create content, it's probably more about like, what's your goal? And then the answer is creating content. If you're thinking, I'd like to create content, but I don't know what about, sit on it for a little bit and think, well, what would my goal really be if I wanted to create content? So in the story I just shared, for me, like my goal was I wanted to teach, and I wanted to teach about something that I was getting asked a lot about by my friends. And I had these resources that I wanted to give for free. And I wanted to find a way to generate income that allowed me to be really flexible with my time. And voila. So that's kind of like a personal goal. Like, this is what I wanted for my life. Once you have that developed, then you need a mission statement for the content that you're creating. When you create content, there is definitely a brand that you're building, and every brand needs a mission statement. Like, here is what I am offering into the world. Here's how I am helping other people. Even if the way that you're helping is by, providing entertainment, or, like if you were providing meme content, for example, they're still offering something specific. It's not just making people laugh, but it's usually something that has more of a mission statement behind it. And of course, your goals and your mission statement can evolve as you go, but you need like a North Star so that you know what direction to head into as you get the ball rolling. But all that said, like, you can pivot. That's what I did. I created so many different platforms before this one, and I enjoyed those. I did get to complete my mission statements for those, I think, even if some of them were cringy. Even though I didn't generate income. And my goal for my prior channels was not to generate income. I had different goals depending on the channel. So yeah, you can just keep pivoting and morphing, and you can change into a totally different brand if the one that you created isn't quite fitting. And one point that I'd like to put an exclamation point on for like what to focus on when you're getting started is building an audience. If your goal is to earn income from the content you're creating eventually, you have to build an audience. And rather than necessarily seeing it as like you need to figure out what way you're going to earn income and then try to build a bridge to that, like if you're hoping to build income through ad revenue and building a bridge to that, I think it's more valuable to say, how do I build a committed audience? And once you have that audience, the income generating opportunities abound within that space. So then you can lean into whatever avenues that generate income seem to fit best, given the audience that you've built. So as a content creator, the goal is to build an audience. That was a long-winded answer to the first question. So let's carry on. The next question is, how did you choose YouTube as your primary platform? I love YouTube. It is my TV. It is my social media. I don't scroll on any other type of social media. I don't even scroll on YouTube, to be honest. I've set my settings to not keep track of my watch history. And when you log onto YouTube, it doesn't show anything. So I have to actually type in my favorite creators to watch something on YouTube. But like Netflix and Hulu, I maybe will watch like something every 2 weeks or once a month. And I don't scroll Instagram. I only log into Instagram on the occasion that I'm posting for my business. So like YouTube is my space. And it's also a place where I've created 2 prior channels. And so I started YouTubing in 2010 when the landscape of YouTube was very different than it is now. And I've just kind of slowly built up experience bit by bit that I have just enough skill and knowledge to create videos on YouTube. I can on Instagram. I don't know, other formats, the quick form, the short form format, it doesn't do good for my soul. It hurts my soul to watch other short form content. So every now and then I'll put something, but I think this is my jam. And then podcasts seem to fit as well. This just kind of more conversational, extended format feels more comfy to me. because that's what I like listening to. Okay, next question is about the process of making these videos. One question says, how do you come up with new things to talk about? And another similar question says, how do you choose what topics to cover? Great question. I have two different answers to this depending on what era of private practice skills we're looking at. When I first started and my goal was to build an audience, because remember, that is the most important thing to start with, I fed the algorithm. So there were topics that I generated because I was thinking, what are the things that my friends ask me about all the time about starting a private practice, or the things they don't know to ask me about, but I find myself telling them because these are important things to know. So I started with that list that I generated about that, but then I would check it through the algorithm. So every platform has different strategies for optimizing to meet the algorithm's desires. I'm familiar with YouTube. So on YouTube, I use TubeBuddy. There's other ways to research like titles of episodes that kind of tell you like, is this going to perform really well? I would type in potential titles for an episode, like how to design a therapy office from scratch or something like that. I think that was one of my first videos that like had a bit of success. If TubeBuddy is telling me that a lot of people are searching for this, but there's not very many videos popping up in response to that query, like that's a really good sign that it's going to be successful. So this is basically SEO, but on YouTube, because YouTube is both a search engine and social media. I know. But on other platforms, there's other ways to strategize like what's trending and making sure that you catch the trend so you're likely to have success in the algorithm. Now that's what I did at the beginning. I hit it hard, I hit it heavy, and it worked for me. But I think if you want to do this really long term, after a couple of years or so, probably about 2 years, I realized that if I only use that approach, I would burn out, because now instead of feeling like I'm working for myself, I feel like I'm working for the algorithm. So once I hit an income goal that fit like the goal that I set for myself, I'm like, this is enough income for me. I can just sort of sustain. If I stay right here, that's great. I started to just more and more talk about whatever I want to talk about. Or even if there's an episode I'm making where I could tweak the title or the thumbnail to be more algorithm friendly, more likely to get clicked on, I don't always optimize for that because it does something to my mental health to be so focused on that all the time. So I've come to an acceptance that using this approach is more sustainable, where I'm a little more chill. You might see the episode title or thumbnail and not be like, oh my gosh, I have to click on that. It might be like, oh, cool. I could take it or leave it. And there's something about that that's quite soothing for me, even though from a strategic point of view, air quotes, I'm not optimizing anymore. But I do think that is greatly contributing to my ability to sustain this for so long, because yes, I've been doing this for over 7 years. I don't know how long I would have thought I was going to do this when I started. I probably said like 5 to 10 years, and here we are in year 7. It's wild that I'm still showing up every week doing this. It's incredible. And thank you. Thank you for being here. So right now when I talk about whatever I want to talk about, it really is like whatever I want to talk about. And now it's like, I have a gut check process. So I have like a list of videos still that I just am always adding to the list. And then when I'm getting ready to script an episode, I'll look through my list. And if one stands out of like, ooh, that sounds good, I'll start scripting it. And if this happens a lot, honestly, I'll start scripting it. And then I go, just not feeling it. And it might be like, because that's not good for me this week. Like maybe this week is a more stressful week for some other reason for me. And that video is super cool. And I don't have the bandwidth to like burn myself out on making this video. I might do something more conversational like I am this week. That might actually happen for the next several weeks because I got a very full schedule in the next like 6 weeks. And so I'm going to take care of myself and do something a little more low key. So I'd use that gut check. So I pull from things that I hear other therapists talking about, things that I witness in other therapists, things that I witness in myself, things that I read about, like articles in the APA Monitor in Psychology, or if I saw it pop up on the Our Therapist subreddit and I thought it was interesting, or just topics that are popping up online that are relevant to therapists or mental health. Okay, the next question I think is a great one to ask before stepping into content creation, and that is, how do you find balance stepping away from creating and the screens? Because you get a lot of screen time doing content creation for sure. Not only am I looking at my screen when I'm scripting my episodes, but I edit all my own stuff, and that can be 10 plus hours of my week. So for me, part of that balance is like, it's a good fit for me to split my working hours 50-50 between content creation and seeing therapy clients. I see therapy clients half time. And so that kind of creates this really nice balance on a lot of levels, including screen time. But it is a lot of screen time still, no matter how you slice it. I guess I think a lot of people's jobs have a lot of screen time. And one thing that came to mind as I was reflecting on this question is how much overtime, at first it was not intentionally, and now I'm intentional about it, where I will swap my hours to a very intentionally unconventional state so that when the sun is shining outside, I spend as much of it as I possibly can doing things I like, especially if they're outside, but definitely not on a screen. And then I end up working quite a bit in the early mornings and in the evenings after the sun goes down and after my girls are asleep. And sometimes that's not healthy, but I think overall it's been working really well for me. And that also creates this balance where maybe I'm on the screen for a few hours in the morning, and then I might be gardening or visiting the beach, or maybe I bring my screen with me to outside. I will often edit videos by the beach, for example, highly recommend. And so there's kind of a balance there where I kind of take a slower approach, or maybe I'll edit a video for a little bit at home, and then I'll do some gardening for 10 minutes or some laundry or, whatever it might be, and then come back. So I do try to be mindful to kind of take breaks when I can. All right, enough about the process. Next, we're going to talk about all of your money related questions when it comes to content creation. But before we jump into those questions, I'd like to thank Powbox for sponsoring this episode. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I first learned that even with a signed BAA, Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 can't guarantee that 100% of the messages going in and out are HIPAA secure. So without a tool like Powbox operating on the back end, it's almost impossible to stay HIPAA secure unless you forego email altogether. Even if you exclusively use a secure portal to discuss protected health information with your clients, there's still going to be potential clients reaching out initially, and also some clients who will still try to email you because, I don't know, they forgot their password for their portal and they're trying to reach out. So with a tool like Powbox, you can guarantee that every single message is protected. Powbox is super easy to set up, and it's kind of a one and done situation. You just spend a few minutes initially setting it up, and then it's just continuously quietly running in the background. Powbox offers a 14-day free trial to everybody, and they're offering a special discount to Private Practice Skills listeners. Just use coupon code SKILLS at checkout in order to receive $250 off your first year of Powbox. That's Powbox spelled Paubox. Thank you again to Powbox for sponsoring this episode. And now on to your money related questions, which I know you were waiting to hear about. First question, how do you make money from it? I know this sounds silly, but I honestly don't know. It does not sound silly. And it's fun when I meet a new person or I'm catching up with an old friend and it comes up in conversation that I am a content creator and that I generate the majority of my income from creating content. Some people voice it out loud, but even if they don't, I see it on their face. And the look on their face says it all, where it's how do you make money doing that? And some people will sort of say kind of like this commenter said in their question, this might sound silly, but I honestly have no idea how you make money doing that. And that's a reasonable reflection. That makes sense to me, even as someone who does this for a living. It is kind of what a weird thing that I could just literally talk into this microphone, looking at a camera, and my bills are getting paid. How does that actually make sense? So let's talk about how I get paid. So first of all, I have multiple revenue streams. I think that is the most stable way to be a content creator. But of course, as you're just breaking into generating income, you're probably just going to have one income stream get added in at a time. But it's nice that now I have this sort of ecosystem of income streams that offers a lot of stability. And then even between both businesses, that my therapy practice is stable when, content creation is slow, and then content creation is stable when my therapy practice slows down. But even then I don't have that many slow months like that. It's always been stable for years now. But yeah, the amount of income that I have coming in from different revenue streams has fluctuated over the years, kind of changing with the tides of the currents, the tides of the, I said that phrase wrong, but Here is a list of my current revenue streams related to being a content creator, and I am ranking them by which ones produce the most amount of income to least amount of income today. But it's been arranged differently in years past. Right now, my top revenue generating income stream is sponsorships. So most of the time, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, there is a sponsor, and there's only so many content creators in this space, in this niche. I know it might seem like there are a lot, but especially on YouTube, there's not a ton of us. And so if a sponsor is a really good fit for somebody in my niche, which I think the sponsors that I have tend to be like right in my niche, there's only so many content creators they can pay. And there's also multiple brands, potential sponsors competing for the same ad space in your episode. So all of those variables make the potential income go up. Depending on your niche and things like that, the amount that a sponsor might pay varies. And then of course it depends on like views and how many subscribers or followers you have as well. My next biggest income stream is affiliate commissions, which if you're not familiar, it's a little bit like a sponsorship, but instead, whenever I share a link recommending a product or a service, I have a special affiliate link where the price of that product or service is the same for the user, or they might even get a special discount sometimes, but then I receive a commission from each purchase through that link, and that's called an affiliate commission. Affiliate commissions has been like a steady source of my income since the early days, since I started generating income, and that does take up a significant chunk of my income right now. My next biggest source of income right now is YouTube ad revenue. That's been one of the least reliable sources of income this whole time, but as of right now, it is next on the list. But yeah, there have been some months where it will drop down to, I've had it drop down as low as like $100 a month when my views are the same, right? So it fluctuates based on the market and which brands are competing to have ad space on your YouTube videos. And if you're curious what the difference is between YouTube ad revenue and sponsorship is when I read aloud an ad embedded in my episode. The YouTube ad revenue, rather, is like ads that YouTube inserts either during my episode or before and after my episode, and I receive a little bit of income from that on a much smaller scale. Like the highest I've ever earned in a month from YouTube ad revenue is probably like $1,800 a month, which is awesome. But for the most part, it's kind of stayed at like $1,000 a month or less. And right now, my next biggest source of income is course sales. Right now, I only have one course available, the Client Attraction System. There was a time when I had 3 different trainings available, including one about DIYing your website that was at a much higher price point and generated a lot of sales. So there were times in the past where my course revenue matched my sponsorship revenue. I'm currently working on some things. So my course sales might pop back up, but right now it's kind of in a lull. When you create a course, it kind of has a shelf life. So you either need to kind of keep it updated or, at some point you might say, okay, I'm no longer offering this course anymore because it's not up to date. And my next biggest source of income is contracted deliverables. Okay, what does that mean? Basically, if a brand wants my face or a video from me, but they want ownership of it. So let's say a brand wants to post a video of me, but on their website, not like on my YouTube channel or something that I own, then we can have a contracted deliverable where they might say, hey, can you create a 30-second vertical Instagram reel with these features that we are going to post on our brand's page? So then it's just a flat fee for me to make that item for them, but I deliver to them, thus the name deliverable, and I'm working as a contractor. So that's something I do from time to time. Brands will do that either because they think there's value in having my face or my voice affiliated with something, or they will appreciate my approach to however I go about creating the item I'm creating for them, and that it might be easier for them to just pay me to do it rather than them trying to make it from scratch themselves. And the last revenue stream, I think, as of right now, is speaking gigs. I'm trying to remember if there were other revenue streams. I didn't go double check. Sorry. Speaking gigs. There's a potential for revenue to go pretty high there, but the reason why it's at the bottom of the list is because I usually do like one speaking gig per year. They are usually the most amount of work, but I really enjoy it. I really like teaching. There's something about that live element of like being in the room, even if it's virtual, being in the room with the students teaching. I enjoy it so much. So I try to do that at least once a year, but because I don't do it more often, it's at the bottom of the list as far as how much revenue it creates for me. Okay, next money related question. Do you pursue any ad/affiliate partners or do they find you? I think there's differences in how I approach this compared to most. I personally have not approached any ad partners, specifically like sponsorships. All of those are people who have reached out to me, brands who've reached out to me, but I have friends who are content creators who will advocate and reach out to brands, and I'm pretty sure that's like the recommended way to do it. So, but personally, I just really went in hard on growing an audience. And then even when I was still relatively small with 1,000 subscribers, I got reached out to by my first sponsor. And so that's kind of fit well for me, that like brands will scout creators. And if you're kind of right in their niche, they'll find you, but you can also advocate for sure. I know people do that. I just don't know how to do that. And then for affiliate partners, it's kind of both ways. There's whole systems for how you can request, like if there's a product I already use and I love it, I will go and see if they have an affiliate program. So for example, Squarespace is what I use for my therapy practice website. I think it's a great platform for newbies who want to have success with their website but have no tech skills whatsoever. So I use it for my therapy practice. It's what I taught on in my course. And so I reached out online and tried to figure out, is there a way to become an affiliate with Squarespace? And while my course was up, like that was generating a significant chunk of my monthly income just from people using my Squarespace affiliate link. But I signed up online. I think I had to apply to show like enough people are going to make purchases that it's worth their while. I don't know how they do it, but yeah, you can reach out for almost any product or service and see if they offer affiliates. And sometimes affiliate partners reach out to me. Okay, there are some questions that are kind of repeats a little bit, but this one is specific to this year. They say, how do you make money in 2025 and how do you set up brand deals? So I'll answer the second part first. Building an audience is like, again, I'm going to just keep repeating the importance of building an audience as a content creator, because if you already have an audience built, then one, brands will reach out to you, or if you're reaching out to a brand, then you can pitch them with your audience, basically saying like, hey, this is the audience that listens or watches, consumes my stuff. And I think I'm already using your product, or I think they're going to think your product is awesome for these reasons, and you can just send a link to your, social media or website or wherever to sort of show the stats. You can also build a media kit. The first time I ever used a media kit was like a couple months ago. And if you don't know what a media kit is, it's just like, it's kind of like a resume for content creators. It's like a one-page thing that just shows all of your stats across all of your platforms. And so then it can kind of pitch to brands like, hey, here's why you might be interested in working with me, and just like a quick way to digest all of your information. So you can also build your media kit. And if there's anything that looks like it's sort of lacking in your media kit, then you can focus on bolstering your audience or your numbers in that space before pitching to brands. How do you make money in 2025? I mean, I covered my revenue streams. They are still working. They were working before. I think even if you don't have a sponsorship, starting with affiliate links is probably a great way to like get your skin in the game. So even if you have a small audience, if there are products or services that you recommend, then you can always see if there's a way to apply to become an affiliate for that product, and then use those links wherever it is that your audience is, right? So you could post it on Instagram if you're posting on Instagram, and wherever your audience follows you. And something I didn't say, but is important, is if you have your own product, that is probably the most successful way to make money. Because if you have a great product that's exactly for the audience that's already following you, they're going to want to buy it from you. So even if you have, 100 followers or 500 followers and like 1 to 5% of those people are interested in buying your product, you can already get the ball rolling. So in the space that I'm in, I think a course is a type of product that works really well, or similar kind of like electronic deliverables, like an ebook or a PDF or that kind of thing where I can teach, I think is a successful win. And it's possible to earn a lot of money from a relatively small audience if whatever product you've built is tailored directly to them. But again, I would build the audience first and then see what they need and then create the product that fits what they need. If you build the product first and then build the audience, it's less likely to be successful, or you just might not generate as many sales, as much income. Okay, this next question, I don't totally understand it. It says, what is the best forum to get paid? And I'm not sure if they're saying what's the best platform to use for social media for getting paid, or like the best way to receive payments when you're getting paid. If for the first question of like which social media platform, I can only speak to my experience where I'm really just on YouTube and my website. SEO is still winner, winner, chicken dinner. I can't emphasize it enough. And email list as well. Anytime I share anything with my email list that has like, there's a promotion or sale or an affiliate link, it outperforms anywhere else where I might promote a product. So email lists are a win. Like if you can start generating an email list early on, then that's probably the best space to get paid from, if that makes sense. I'm trying to remember if I have an episode about email lists, and maybe I made one like 1,000 years ago. I'll have to look that up. If you're curious to learn more about building an email list, let me know in the comments, because that's one of those just like unsexy, but like winning income generating strategies out there. And like no one talks about it because people are like, do people actually still read their emails? Like when I send an email, my email list is over 40,000 people, and more than half of them typically open and read the email, which is like a statistic that would be out of this world. If like half of my subscribers watch my YouTube videos, it would be like 10 times, no, more than 10 times more. It would be like 20 or 30 times more, something like that, than are currently watching. Or, on Instagram, I think I've heard that like 6% of your followers see your content. So the email list, like it gets in front of everybody and then it's up to them if they want to click it or not, kind of thing. So it's a winner. Okay, and last question, kind of similar to some of the things we've talked about. How do you market yourself to brands, and how much of a following do you need? So the first part we touched on a bit already. Like marketing yourself to brands really is focused on like if you're pitching yourself to a brand, you just want to make sure that whatever content you're creating and the audience you've built is aligned with whatever they're selling. Basically, you want to be able to show that like the audience that follows me here would be really interested in purchasing your service or product. And then if that's a genuinely accurate statement, you can just share that with the brand along with your stats, maybe your media kit. And then how much of a following do you need? It really depends. I would say the more niched your niche, the smaller the following you need. Meaning if you are speaking to the masses, you want to appeal to everybody, you're just maybe making, not just, but you're making content that's entertaining for everybody. I'm thinking of like, I really like watching Daily Dose of Internet on YouTube, right? It's basically, if you don't know what that is, it's basically America's Funniest Home Videos, but YouTube in 2025 edition, where like, I forget how many subscribers this person has on their channel, but it's just like a stream of the most relevant or interesting videos that have been happening lately, or just funny to watch. That's like anyone could watch that and potentially find it interesting. It's not like I'm speaking specifically to law students in law school who are studying for their, bar exam or something. I hope I didn't mess that up because I'm obviously not a lawyer. Okay, that's going to be a smaller audience, but then because there's a smaller group of people that you're speaking to, brands who, let's say, are selling a study guide that you think is amazing, that's a study guide for your bar exam or something like that. Like that would be a perfect brand for you to reach out to. And you probably don't need that big of an audience for that brand to be like, oh, sweet. Yes. Like we would love for you to share this. We would pay for you to share this with your audience. So that's something to keep in mind. Like the more niche you are, the smaller audience you need in order to pitch to brands. If you have a very broad audience, like the Daily Dose of Internet kind of audience, and you have like 500 followers and you're pitching to these big brands, you might not get noticed. But if you have 500 followers and you're speaking to those law students studying for the bar, now you might actually be able to get somewhere. So that's something worth considering. You could kind of be very more specifically niched at the beginning and then broaden out in time as an option. Okay, my friends, I have a client in 10 minutes. So I'm going to push the pause button, and at some point I will finish getting back to the rest of your questions. Hello, I'm back. I'm aware that typically I wouldn't wear workout clothes for an episode, but I had this little tiny window of time available before picking up my kiddos, and I thought it was so appropriate that I just go ahead and use it to film the rest of this episode because I spent the rest of my day seeing a therapy client, getting lunch with a friend, going to a workout class, and now I have this little window of time where I can finish recording this episode. And that's partly what I love about being a content creator. So here I am in my workout clothes. A +1 for definitely having time to take workout classes during off hours when the various workout classes are not busy. So yet another reason why I love this job. Now, speaking of all of that, the next category of questions I just labeled as downsides because after all that I said, there are definitely downsides. The first question in this category, someone asked, what are the risks associated with it? Honestly, so many. Let's see, I got a list. The first downside and risk is the financial instability, especially at the beginning, but it could come at any time. The best way to prep for this, I would suggest, is when you're first starting out, have some form of stable income and do content creation on the side and wait until it shows that it's able to generate a reliable source of income before you scale back income elsewhere. And even once you're established, there's going to be fluctuations from one month to the other. My workaround around this is that I just make financial choices and spend money based on annual averages rather than whatever kind of month I've been having. So that way, if there's ever a lull, I'm not caught off guard. And of course, I have a very, very long runway in my rainy day fund. So even if all income streams stopped coming in, I would be good for a really long time before I'd have to start panicking. Like at least 6 months. I think I probably have more like a 10-month runway in my savings. So I kind of made it a little extra because it is higher risk with the financial income. Also, some ways that I mitigate this risk is I've diversified my income streams, meaning not only the income streams that I talked about as a content creator in this episode, but I split my income. Well, I split my time 50-50 between running my therapy practice and content creation. Generally, content creation pays the bulk of my bills, but I also have a half-time thriving therapy practice that stays full all the time. So that income resource is stable and reliable. So that's another way that I've diversified my income. Another potential risk that I've experienced, and I've definitely heard from content creator friends as well, is the plethora of ways that it could impact your mental health negatively. There is something that's especially isolating about living so much of your time online. Like it's not just the computer screen, but like putting content out there in these parasocial platforms where these aren't people who know you personally. There's something that's like very dehumanized about interacting with somebody just on the internet versus, if your friend was going through something, like your actual IRL friend. We have a way of like generating a lot more benefit of the doubt for people that we know in real life. And so the potential for, negative comments or just like comments that aren't super thoughtful about the fact that you're a real person generating the content and not like a big brand or something like that, like a faceless robot, a soulless robot. Gosh. Yeah, people aren't necessarily thinking that from that filter when they're leaving comments and interacting with you. And even people's kind of quote unquote hater reactions aside, just it's so easy to kind of fall prey to the numbers because you're not signed on to like a reliable salaried contract with an employer where unless you lose your job, you're getting a certain amount of income. It's really easy to kind of like constantly check, like anytime you post, how is that video or that post performing? How many likes did it get? How many comments did it get? How many followers or subscribers do I have? How many people are visiting my website? How many people opened that email this week? Like checking those numbers kind of can create a somewhat false sense of security when it goes up, and can also, like, if anything doesn't perform as well as your average or as you'd hoped, then it's really possible to take it personally or just kind of feel the blow of like, I don't know if this business model is working, when ebbs and flows are totally natural. Like that's just normal. Not every video is going to be like the next viral video, or not every post is going to like go viral. That's not a healthy goal. Personally, I do the best I can to minimize looking at those kinds of statistics. I don't kind of watch how every single post does. I don't read all my comments. Maybe like once a month or so, I'll just kind of check in. How did this month go overall compared to my average? Do I want to make any adjustments? That sort of thing. Another risk is the fact that the algorithm is in charge, like especially if you're only utilizing one platform on social media, or even if it's on your website, the Google algorithm changes a lot. It has changed so much just in the last like 1 to 2 years, even in the last 6 months. So even if you have something that's performing super great, but you're posting on TikTok and then TikTok gets banned, for example, then you could lose your entire business model in one day. So that's a huge risk when it comes to content creation. And I think the best workaround around this is twofold. One, if it's possible and sustainable to utilize more than one platform, then you kind of have like a footing in more than one place. It's kind of like diversifying your income. Like if one ends up tanking, you still have some other things to stand on. And the other that I've said now several times in this episode, and I cannot emphasize enough, is having an email list, because no one can take your email list from you. The algorithm can't decide that your emails aren't going to get delivered that day. So an email list is, again, like the least sexy part about content creation, but one of the most valuable parts of making it a sustainable business and keeping ownership over the direction of what you do. Another potential risk is the capacity for work-life imbalance. I mean, I just shared about how I went off and had this like awesome day between filming this morning and now. And so there's the potential for really great work-life balance. But because you're your own boss, then it's also really possible to work yourself too hard because you're trying to keep up with the numbers and make sure you're generating income in a timely manner. And so it's not like your paycheck is coming no matter what. You have to keep working to get your paycheck. So it's really possible that the flexibility can kind of come back and bite you and you end up overworking yourself. So it takes a lot of intentionality with your schedule to counterbalance this and not burn out. Another risk that I don't hear people talk about enough is potential for legal issues. There are so many things that I just was not worried about as a person until becoming a content creator and realizing like there's a lot of things legally that can go wrong, even if you're following all the rules. And that's the key phrase, because I used to always think like, as long as I'm following the rules, I should be good. But people will still, if you have a voice, authority, power, money, there will always be a space where somebody with not great intentions will come for you. And if you value speaking freely, then it comes back to bite you even more. So I've spoken about that in episodes past, so I won't get into it today. And another question, similarly, how do you handle the haters? Yeah, some people are genuine haters. It is such a small minority of people. I can't emphasize that enough. I think sometimes it could feel like there's just like a universe of haters out there, but it's generally the 1 or 2 people or something like that who are voicing themselves the most loudly. And that might be 1 or 2 people out of, 75,000 subscribers on YouTube or whatever it might be. But it just takes one person out of this like I don't know, my childhood city had 80,000 people as its population. Like just one person in that whole city as like kind of having a sour taste in their mouth and wanting to make your life harder to be successful at it. So the main way I deal with that is it's not good for me to read comments regularly. As much as I want to, it's a boundary I need to keep in order to be able to keep doing this regularly. So I do read comments, but oftentimes, most of the time, it's like way later and I don't read all of the comments. But if I release a video, I try to wait until a time where in case there's like a really negative comment, I have a minute to like deal with it. That really helps. I did have an issue with somebody who like really tried to defame my therapy practice. I don't know who it was, but it was clearly somebody who was following my content on private practice skills, leaving negative air quote reviews for my therapy practice who was not a therapy client. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that can go pretty sour, and that is a risk. So sometimes there's not always a way to deal with it. You cross those bridges as they come. Okay, after I was recording this morning, the first part of this episode, I forgot to take down my Instagram post inviting people to send in questions. And then I realized one person in particular sent in a whole bunch of questions on my Instagram post since I filmed this morning. So there's no way I'm going to get to all of those, but let me tackle a couple of miscellaneous questions that popped up and I'll see if I can get to one or two of this individual's questions. Okay, so one person asked, did you have to create a second business to sell the products you created for private practice skills? Great question. Different people do this differently, but the way I've chosen to do this is to keep everything completely separate. So private practice skills is an LLC. It has its own bank account. It has its own liability insurance. It is its own business entity separate from any other income generating endeavors I do as a person. That was, to me, the safest option. I didn't create the LLC until it was starting to generate some reasonable income, but I've always kept a separate bank account and treated it completely separately. Different website, everything. In fact, most of my therapy clients don't even know that I have private practice skills, or if they found me at some point, they haven't mentioned it, right? They're just separate items. To me, that feels like the legally cleanest way to do it. But I know people who do it differently. So if you're ever unsure, I would consult with a lawyer, or if you're unsure, keep them separate because that's kind of a safe bet. And another miscellaneous question, well, would you recommend for therapists that want to start content creation? I think that means like, would I recommend therapists start content creation? And I'd say if you actually feel a genuine like interest and desire, give it a dabble. Like, even if you're not sure what your goals and your mission statement are, I know I said all that stuff about building the audience and knowing what your point is, but if there's a part of you that sort of has that like itch or interest, like, ooh, I kind of want to do it, by all means, go for it. See what happens when you scratch that itch. If you love it, see if there's something that fits for you. I'd say it's something that for the average person is probably not the best fit. Just for so many reasons. I don't think I can even reasonably list out, but I've just anecdotally, as I watch other people say like, I'm going to give it a go, and then they give it a go, it tends to kind of peter out. So please don't hear that as discouragement to not do it. But if you have a genuine interest, check it out, right? It'd be like, oh, I've always wanted to take a dance class, but I've never given it a try. It's like, why don't you do a free trial class and just see what that's like? And you don't have to do another dance class if you hate it. But that seems like a good place to start, to just dabble a little bit, even if it's going to feel like awkward and wonky because you kind of are like a fish out of water. That's expected. Expect it to feel a little bit like a fish out of water. But if you're like, I'm really curious to see what happens if I keep trying this, that's a good sign that maybe this is worth exploring a little bit more. So I don't have like an official answer, like would I recommend it? But I think for some folks who are looking for that combination of like flexibility and ability to like express yourself freely, maybe you want to teach something or offer something meaningful into the world that generates income, you're really good at being your own boss, you're disciplined, you can hold some boundaries, then it could be a great fit. So it depends. Okay, I promised I would follow up on at least a couple of these like bonus questions, let's say. Everything's anonymous, but if you're listening, person who posted all of these questions at the end, you probably know who you are because there's a lot. Which I appreciate all your questions. Maybe each of these could be their own episode. One question they asked that I haven't covered, I don't think quite yet, is how many hours per week do you spend on it? And was it more or less in the beginning? Awesome question. Early on, I had my private practice that I was doing full time. I was not pregnant, which was a key variable, and I had no children because my capacity greatly changed when I became pregnant and then had children. So early on, I had my full-time private practice, and I did private practice skills for the first year on the side of my full-time private practice. So I think that's a piece that's important to emphasize of like, if you need a stable income outside of content creation, plan to do work outside of your regular work hours. But I tended to spend probably about 20 hours a week for that first week, maybe sometimes more, sometimes less, usually working on my lunch breaks and evenings and weekends. And I just had so much energy and stamina that it felt exciting and worth it to me. I believed in it. I thought it was likely to work. I didn't know if it was going to work, but I thought there was a good chance that it would work out the way that I had envisioned. And I wasn't going to be satisfied until I gave it like the good old college try or whatever that phrase is. So I had this kind of intrinsic motivation to keep working, honestly. And yeah, it was about 20 hours a week between, at the beginning, it was scripting, filming, and editing videos. And then I started doing, I think it was 3 Instagram posts per week. And I was blogging weekly. And then I started my email list and finding ways to grow my email list. And I started building my first courses that I was going to sell. So between all of those things, I was taking about 20 hours a week. And as I had my baby, my first baby, and then another baby later, that is when I slowed down for a while, for a little bit. It was also the pandemic and I didn't have childcare. I mean, it was the whole thing. I had a spouse who was a frontline worker, wow. So I worked a lot less. I saw way fewer therapy clients, and I probably spent maybe more like 8 or 10 hours a week for a while during the pandemic on private practice skills. But at that point, I had set it up enough that it was generating some steady income, which was really nice. And then at this point, I have more time and I spend more time on private practice skills, and I love it. And I spend more time seeing therapy clients too. So it's just fluctuated with my schedule and my availability as I've gone. Okay, and another question that I haven't been asked this question as much recently. Do you do it all yourself or do you have any help? Thanks for asking. I remember when I first started, I used to get really offended because people assumed that either my husband or hired help did the filming and or editing, which to me, maybe this was me reading into it, but I always just perceived it as like, is that because I'm a woman? You don't think I can do technology? I can't do the technology. And I always think of myself as tech curious. I'm not intrinsically wired for technology, but I think it's fascinating and I just need to be good enough at using the technology to accomplish my goals. I don't have to be a professional. But yes, I've done almost everything by myself. At this point, I have a friend who contracts for me very part-time, converting my video scripts into blog posts. So any blogs that you've seen go up in the last 2 years or so is converted by my friend who does that for me. And I've also had contracted help to work on my website design. And I actually have a new website that's getting worked on right now, TBD on the release time. But those are some things that I've contracted out. Otherwise, I do 100% of it. The week in and week out, this is me. It's if you got a response to an email, it was me. Like all of it is me. So that's something I kind of pride myself on. And I hear so often other folks in the niche advocate for delegating, hiring out. And I get the reasoning for that. But for me, if I become a manager, I don't like my job anymore. And so for me, this would not be sustainable anymore if I had employees working for me for like carrying more of the bulk of the work. I don't think at least in this phase of life with little kids, I don't think I'm wired to be a manager, because I do have very high expectations. I realize that. And so I find myself getting disappointed pretty easily when someone's working for me and not meeting those expectations. Does that sound awful? That's just the truth. That's me. Okay, actually, a lot of the questions that this person asked, I already touched on. Another question they asked is, does it benefit your private practice in any way? The biggest way it does is it takes so much pressure off my private practice from needing to generate income. I have very minimally raised my rates since I started private practice skills. Typically, I would have raised my rates $5 to $10 per session every single year. And I think I only raised my rates once or twice since I started private practice skills 7 years ago. And I know other psychologists in the area are charging probably about like $60 a session more than I am. So I feel pretty proud of that. And that's probably the biggest impact that it's had on my private practice. And occasionally, like, I love working with therapists as therapy clients. So I have the occasional therapist come on my caseload who has been recommended to me or found me through private practice skills. So that's certainly, like, I'd be lying if that wasn't benefiting my therapy practice, even though that's not the majority of my therapy clients. I do enjoy that. Okay, and one last question I'm going to answer before I sign off, and I have to get my kids. Someone says, how do you get out of your head about what's a good post? I love that so much. I can get into my head about what's a good post, and I think that comes back to focusing on the numbers, because if a good post is one that is going to get a lot of views or likes or engagement, that sort of thing, it's going to backfire mental health wise. Like, for example, as a consumer of YouTube, a lot of the YouTubers that I really like to follow are people who don't have super viral posts. So there are niches where there's going to be a small subgroup of people who really appreciate your content, even if the majority of people, or in this case, the majority of therapists or therapists in private practice, might not love your content. There's going to be a sub niche of people who do. And if I try to always make my content be about the views, then I'm going to be speaking to a broader mass than maybe I mean to. So it's less about how many and more about like the quality. And if I feel like I'm creating a quality post that's like up to my preferences or standards, and some weeks there's going to be like, that wasn't super quality, but that's what I had this week. That's also, permission for that. But if overall I feel like the content I'm creating is the quality that I'm looking for, then I just let that be okay and not worry about the numbers. Try not to worry about the numbers and check on those. So yes. Well, it's time for me to sign off and go pick up my kiddos. And yes, I'm going to edit this video tonight after they go to bed. But I had a beautiful, like, multiple hours in the middle of the day where I just hung out with my friend and worked out. So +1 for content, plus 100 for content creation. Honestly, I love that so much. Like, the sun is shining. Like, I really do love this job and I appreciate it. And it's only possible because you participate. So thank you for being here as well. And if you had any like heavy hitting questions about content creation that I didn't touch on, feel free to leave those in the comments below. I may not check them right away, but I will check them later whenever I'm ready to talk about this topic again, see what people asked about, so I know what episode to make about it next. Well, thank you to all of you who submitted your questions. I hope this was helpful to you if you've ever thought about whether you want to pursue content creation and all of that. And if you are going down that route, sending all my heart emojis your way, because it's a big challenge. It's an undertaking, but you're doing it. And so sending my well wishes your way. And on that note, until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.